everyone. Welcome to The Finance Story, and I'm your host, Vishal Krishna. We are a leading digital publication that celebrates and captures life in finance. Our series, titled Finance 2022 and Beyond, powered by Capita, aims to inspire young and old, CEOs and employees alike about this new world order that has emerged thanks to COVID-19. There has been a realignment of businesses around the world, but it's also an opportunity for many of us. Digital is the name of the game, and the role of finance has also changed with it. Today, financiers and finance professionals need to look at a world that has converged onto a smartphone, while their industry still continues to grapple with physical legacy. Talking about all this and more today is the chairman and CEO of Alfahive, Rostow Ravanan. Alfahive is a company that helps global enterprises mitigate their cybersecurity risk using new age technologies. A little bit about Rostow's past. He was the CEO of Mindtree, where he worked for 20 years. He's on the board of several companies such as Teleradiology Solutions, Infilect, and Voiro. Rostow started his career in KPMG. He's also a CA and a graduate of MES College, which coincidentally is my alma mater too. How are you, Rostow?
Very well, thank you, Vishal. It's always embarrassing
to
listen to your own introduction, but thank you for making it short.
No, that's a brilliant resume, right? I mean, the entire transformation of how a finance professional can also become a technologist and become the CEO of a tech company is phenomenal. I have a lot of respect for that. And the fact that you're from MES makes it even more better. Times have changed in those last 30, 35 years. I want to go back to the backstory. You started off as a CA, and then the technology thing happened, right? Tell me, how did you choose finance or CA? How did it all begin for you?
Truth be told, I think it was a combination of two things. Partly it was financial circumstances in the family at that time. The CA was a much more cost-effective course to go through, especially because the fees itself was low, and you would also get paid as an article clerk. You get paid a stipend if you join a good CA firm. So that benefited at one level. But at another level, I was lazy. All other courses of study required a tough entrance exam to go through. And for example, the standard options were engineering, medicine, etc. But those had like very tough entrance exams to go through versus the CA, which had very easy to get in, and all the pain is pushed towards the end of the course. So I decided to take that option, and that's how I got into CA.
No, you mentioned quickly that it was also a time where it was difficult for you, right? I mean, did you really work and do your studies? Was that how you started your career?
That is right. So the CA course in those days, you just sign up for the course and then you immediately register as an article clerk. And then that's how the course starts. Those days, now you obviously have a different structure for the course, but those days you started. So therefore, I worked as an article clerk with a global CA firm and then pursued my studies in parallel.
Wow, that's phenomenal. I hope all kids listening realize that those days of India were very different, and that was very heartening to hear. How did you build this affinity for technology? Did you learn that while auditing a lot of firms at the time? And there were not many technology companies also, right? So how did you build this affinity for technology?
I think I had a passion for technology even those days. Even we had like a rudimentary computers, and if you remember, this is 1991. So you had MS-DOS, and you had floppy disks, and you had to like boot a machine from the floppy disk. You had WordPerfect and Lotus 123, and so it's a completely different world those days. But from then, I had an interest in technology, so adopted technology wherever we could in audit. But those days, you not had that many audit tools using technology. So it was more to write your report on WordPerfect, or prepare the balance sheet, etc., or do the checks for totaling or whatever using Lotus 123, etc. So started using it on a more rudimentary basis there. But when I moved after qualifying, when I moved from Pricewaterhouse, where I did my articles, to KPMG, where I joined after qualification, luckily India was beginning to open up. The firm had come to India in '94. I joined as soon as the firm came into India. KPMG started to verticalize that early. So KPMG had a division that did specifically client service for information, communications, and entertainment. So I got involved in it. And the good part is if you work in a well-run global organization, you have a lot of support resources, knowledge, publications, and so on and so forth. That just whetted my interest a little bit more and got deeper into technology during that phase.
No, this is phenomenal, right? On hindsight, you'd not planned any of this, right? You were just curious enough, right, to learn all this. The reason I ask is because without curiosity, I think we're all stuck in our jobs.
That is right. You actually bring up a very important point. So today when I hire, for example, one of the things I specifically look for in talent is curiosity. And because the world in front of us is changing so rapidly that unless you're curious and unless you're learning continuously, I think it'll become very difficult for you to succeed. Just like, uranium or plutonium, all elements have a half-life. The knowledge we gain through our life also has a half-life. And unless you're learning continuously, you become outdated there. So you bring up a very important point on curiosity. But coming back to my story, I think you captured it right. There was functional work. I was part of a group called Corporate Finance. So we did mergers and acquisitions, valuations, etc. But I would take the trouble to go beyond that to say, what are the kind of knowledge resources that KPMG had for information communications, entertainment, trends and technology, and so on and so forth there, and use that to pick up more knowledge on technology, participate in internal discussions and things like that. So picked up the sort of, or what shall I say, indulged my curiosity in technology along with my day-to-day work, and that's how I slowly became, more proficient at it as time went by.
Are you a natural hustler, or you had this pressure to succeed because of the past that you had witnessed in India at a time where we were all trying to make? I mean, I think the 90s is truly an expression of our generation, right? So, what was it, pressure or hustle or natural curiosity, or a combination of all three?
I think it will be a combination of all three, plus definitely an aspect of luck, because there's only so much you can plan, so much you can push your own life forward. I mean, you can have aspirations, you can work hard and whatever there, but sometimes it's also important to be in the right time in the right place. So I think a combination of my efforts plus luck played a part in my own career. For example, I was at KPMG, got seconded to New York City, which is a dream kind of an offering, dream kind of an
at the time, yeah,
for a young professional. Yeah, when you're 27, to go to the US would have been like a dream posting in a very large, globally well-run organization like KPMG. To get seconded to New York was, very, very aspirational. But out of the blue, I left that and went and joined Lucent. Part of a team that bought Lucent to India, set up the Bell Labs Product Realization Center along with a whole bunch of people there. That move was completely happenstance, and several things that happened because of that move. I would always admit that a little bit of fortune also played played a role.
That's very well said. So life throws these breadcrumbs and traces. You got to just follow them. That's so interesting.
Absolutely. You can't not have a plan. I mean, you can't just wake up every day and just float along with the tide. That won't get you anywhere, or it'll take you to a place where you're unhappy. So you have to have a plan, but you also have to have a tolerance for a little bit of fortune to throw like a curveball at you. Sometimes those work out well. Sometimes those lead you down like a tough path as well. But I would recommend leave a little bit of freedom for luck to also play a part in your life.
Okay, you're 27 years old. This is a very important thing that I want to ask you. I think most of them in India, at least in the Bangalore circles, would know it, but not the global circles, because the FinanceStory is a global publication. The Mindtree thing, when it happened, right? The co-founders were all technology people. They were technocrats, slightly senior to you, maybe a few years ahead of you. Yeah. Was that risky for you to take that move? How did you think about it? Who reached out? You became a co-founder, so that's what interests me. Were you in a network that you connected to, and that's how you met the folks and you took it forward? How did that happen?
I think it happened again, like I said, coincidence. I worked with Subroto Bagchi, one of the co-founders of Mindtree, was my colleague at Lucent. We did a bunch of things together. we had a few areas of responsibility. We were not, directly, and I was not reporting to Subroto, but a few of the things that I was tasked with were part of his portfolio. So we had overlapping responsibilities. So we got a chance to work together very closely. And I think the turning point at a certain stage was that we wrote a white paper for Lucent, which said the war for the 21st century will be a war for talent and less a war for marketplace. And when we explored that further, we just saw this enormous potential for software in the 21st century. And I think Subroto woke up one morning and said, if there is so much of an opportunity, why do it for somebody else? Why not do it for ourselves? And then he reached out to me saying that if he sets up something like this, would I be happy to be a part of the team? So like I said, just same place, same organization, joint projects, just developed a huge amount of goodwill and respect for each other. And that's how he asked me, and I didn't even take like a millisecond to say yes. Mainly because of the kind of person that Subroto is. He's just truly inspirational, very, very endearing person. So the team was more important to me at that stage than the business, etc. there. But the second factor of why I said yes to Subroto was in his pitch, he also mentioned that the company would have a very strong social consciousness. We would save a percentage of our PAT and use it to improve society. And that, I think, was the second decisive factor for me. I strongly believe that, business has to also have a social consciousness. So this way I got a chance to indulge my professional life, but by doing my professional life itself, I'm doing work for the good of the society rather than trying to keep it separately. Otherwise, as a professional, sometimes you spend Monday to Friday doing your work, and then doing on Saturday, Sunday, you have to do things that are not, that you feel necessary from a social perspective. Here was this place that gave me a chance to do both together. There were obviously lots of unknowns of being an entrepreneur, including on a lighter vein. One of my aunts called my father and said, "Oh my God, he's leaving a good job and going."
You actually read my mind. I was about wondering, right? In '97, when we look at startups, nobody had even heard of it. In fact, I think the families would have hated you. That was my next question.
Yeah, so I was 28 at that time, unmarried. So my aunt called my dad and said, "Oh my God, he's doing this. He's going to have a job with no PF, and nobody will give their daughter to him. How will he get married?" So that was a natural reaction for the extended family. But I had two things in my favor. One was, like I said, very strong team. People like Subroto, KK, Ashok Suta, etc. were part of the team there. But also equally, again, like I said, right time, right place, right? I remember 1999 or maybe 2000, I forget, right? As of now, Infosys had just crossed $100 million.
Yes.
First Indian company to list on the NASDAQ. So it was a high for the tech industry in India. I mean, where could you have imagined the first generation entrepreneurs build a business to $100 million? No Tata Birla in their surname, right? The business was built by the founders of Infosys, Wipro, etc. was built from scratch by their sheer will. And then it was a milestone year for Infosys going public in the US. So a little bit of the rara of the moment helped. But it's also the benefit of the e-commerce boom, right? 1999, 2000, Priceline was more valuable than 5 airlines put together. So the peak of the e-commerce boom. Again, like I said, a combination of things that we did on our own, plus also right time, right place, pushed me into that direction.
Okay, but what were the early learnings? Like you said, Infosys was a great time. I remember all the headlines it received. It actually kickstarted the startup scene in India. Actually, I go back to that era, not Flipkart or anything. It's just that listing on NASDAQ that changed everything, right? I want to know your leadership change. Finance person, getting in the technology company. Yes, it's management of people, management of talent. How did your roles evolve? And the road to a CEO as such? There must be many learnings. I know we have very little time, but how do we compress all that, right? If you can succinctly tell us what are some of the paths to leadership that you took there, it'll be very interesting for the audience.
Though I had qualified in finance, I actually never played a finance role. Like we just spoke, initially consulting in KPMG, then a technology role in Lucent, etc. So when the Mindtree story started, I was supposed to be responsible for strategy and planning. Then ran the BFSI vertical for Mindtree for a few years. So all my life was in business consulting kind of roles originally. 2004 was the first time I got to actually play the finance role. And that again was coincidence. Our then CFO quit. We were preparing for an IPO. We had just done an acquisition. And the organization felt that instead of inculcating a new person into the finance role, since I had the basic sort of academic qualifications, can I take it over? So again, completely, a happenstance event. Took it over, spent 10 years as CFO from 2004 to 14. Great run in that entire period. Mindtree IPO, multiple acquisitions, good things and bad things that happened to the company. But I think I succeeded because I had an equal focus on business as well as all the finance fundamentals like treasury and accounting and compliance, and many things came into play. So managed the finance fundamentals, but endeared myself to the organization by being a very business-focused person. So therefore, so like I said, you play to your strengths, right? You have your role, you have to always deliver to your role, but you also play to your strengths. So that's what led to the next step, where I ran the European operations for a year and then took over as CEO for 3.5 years before I left Mindtree.
What do failures mean to you? I mean, I'm sure illustrious career. The happen chances that you talk about and everything that you've learned, were there any failures at all?
Many. And rather than explain the failures, I'll explain what failure means to me. Firstly, you need to have a tolerance for risk. And therefore, when you have that tolerance for risk, you are experimenting, and while you're experimenting, things will go wrong. So as to get the average right rather than to get each individual decision right there. Maybe just to illustrate, I think one quarter immediately after we went IPO, Mindtree declared a loss because we had taken a hedge instrument. I was the CFO at that time, so I have to take the responsibility for it. And the hedge went wrong. Markets moved in a direction that it had not moved for 20 years, and the hedge went wrong, and we had to declare a loss. Just imagine, newly minted company after IPO, and declare a loss for a reason that purely was a finance function driven reason. There. So like that, there have been many cases where I've stumbled. But my whole philosophy has been, be prepared for it. Everything you try will not go well, and nobody will. What is important is not that you stumbled, but how quickly you get up and how quickly you acknowledge, what you did that led to the problem, and how quickly you fix the problem. Which is what anybody would expect, right? Like, we are in a services business, and you go to a hotel, for example. You don't expect everything to go right, but if something goes wrong, how quickly do they acknowledge the problem, understand, empathize with you, and fix the problem is more important there. So anticipate some things will fail, but have a plan for recovery when it fails. And most importantly, don't become defensive, don't blame something else, etc. there. Own up when things go wrong. My leadership sort of experience has been to own up for it. Even if it is not your fault, own up to it there. Because on a lighter vein, I'll tell you, hundreds of times you'll get credit for things you did not do. Which therefore, by statistical probability, means you have to take the responsibility for things.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I couldn't agree with you more. And you could have practically retired, right? But why start up again? I mean, what are the thought processes behind Alfahive? I know it's in cybersecurity. You want to tell us about this company quickly, please?
I think I'm just turned 50 a few months back, so I still feel I have a long productive career.
50 is the new 25.
Probably there. Basically, therefore, I have too much nervous energy. So if I don't do anything that channelizes that nervous energy, then it clearly, I'll go mad, or my wife will go mad if I sit at home without doing anything there. But also on a personal level, I felt my professional journey was interrupted, because of what happened with Mindtree, and therefore there is that urge to say, can you go back and prove yourself? Building a business from scratch to $1 billion in revenue, which to my mind is a more valuable outcome rather than $1 billion in valuation. There, 1 in 20,000 companies become $1 billion in revenue. I did it once, but I want to do it if whatever, God is kind, everything goes well, luck is on my side, we put in the effort, etc. Want to see if we can experience that same high once again, because like I said. There is that
nervous energy, and aspiration.
Exactly, exactly.
No, today startups are the buzzword. I'm sure with your background, you could do it faster. And I think second time founders do it faster than the first time. At least in my journalistic career, I've seen that, right? I've seen Behrod Shah of Gupshup with Upwork, took him 20 years, but it took him slightly lesser with Gupshup, right? Right. I'm sure you're going to do it, and I wish you all the best for it. And what is your advice to startup founders today? Because many of them feel, especially the finance guys, right? They feel overwhelmed by these technology and product guys, right? How do you advise them to, look at this entire function? If you're a co-founder of a startup and you have engineers who are running everything, what should the finance person look at?
My recommendation for somebody who's joined a very early stage company in the finance team would be two things. Firstly, make sure that all the basic fundamentals are right. Your TDS remittance goes on time and so on and so forth there. Because if you fail the hygiene factors, and everything else you build on top of it will be equally sort of problematic. So firstly, take responsibility for your function and make sure that all the accounting, reporting, compliance, all of that is now running very, very smoothly. Appropriate use of tools, whether it's Tally or QuickBooks or whatever that you feel, make sure that you automate as much as you can and get the basics of your function running very smoothly. Secondly, don't be standoffish with the others in your organization. So if there's a release going on, sit with the product team and figure out what they're doing there. If there's a product discussion going on, the roadmap discussion going on, sit with the team and figure out what they're doing. Why should this button be green or red on the background of this page should be yellow or blue or whatever it is there. Sit with them. Maybe the first 10 meetings you can't contribute anything, but you will learn. And then maybe the 11th meeting, you'll have enough to play a role in those discussions there. Because in a startup, the best thing you can do is to get involved in the nitty-gritties of the business as early as possible. Learn, read, talk to people, etc. This thing, because you can't be a quote unquote, like the Davis Cup alone in the tennis world has a non-playing captain responsibility. In a startup, if you're any part of a leadership team, you can't be a non-playing captain. You have to be, get into the trenches along with the rest of the team there. If you take that trouble, 5 years, 10 years down the line, it will pay huge dividends for you.
That's a brilliant suggestion. And, and just touching a little further now, CAs or finance professionals should evolve. There's blockchain, there's AI, there's Web 3.0 now. How should they embrace these? I mean, should they read about them? I'm sure you would have read about them because you've met clients. Would you say do the same if you're a startup professional, you're a finance professional in a startup?
Absolutely. I think, like we said, started this session with being curious, I think is an essential requirement for professionals today. At least to the extent that my life is of any relevance to others. In the last year, especially during the pandemic, I noticed a marked difference in the way I consume content. Previously, it was primarily talking to people and reading books, but I think the reading books bit has died a little bit there. Today, I consume most of my content online through blogs, through publications like Your Story, Ken, etc. There because they
the
produce
form factor has
more.
changed. Absolutely.
Exactly. No, but one is the form factor has changed, but more importantly, I find some of these pick smaller areas and go deep into one thing. So if you read like one article on Your Story or one article on the Ken or whatever, that particular subject you get to explore all angles of that one particular topic. Versus like a newspaper, for example, gives you breadth but very little depth there.
Yeah.
And secondly, some of the mainstream media have also lost credibility. They all have their own angles. They all have their own sort of pressure, etc. Versus some of the newer media, at least have both the perception plus also the implementation of independence there. So I consume more content online. I consume more content through blogs. I mean, for example, there's a very large venture capital firm called A16Z, Androsin Horowitz firm. They produce a lot of good content. The MIT, whatever, Stanford kind of universities, etc. There. So I consume a lot more content on video through blogs, etc. Today. Start very broad, all the buzzwords like blockchain and quantum computing and everything else there. Skim through them and then identify those that resonate a little bit more deeper with you. Maybe blockchain doesn't float your boat, but maybe whatever confidential computing does. In which case, bookmark those pages, sign up for newsletters, etc., and stay in touch with the topic that you feel very relevant to. Because I just one last second to complete this thought. The biggest benefit that a finance person can bring to any company, whether it's a large enterprise company or a startup, is that maybe only the CFO and the CEO get a view of the entire business. Even if you're, say, whatever Tata Sons, for example, only the CFO of Tata Sons along with the chairman would get to see the entire group's numbers, business plans and everything else, right? So the benefit of having a pan company view, if you can bring an external perspective as well, then your ability to see dots and connections that otherwise can get missed out. If you're only a head of sales or a marketing or a production manager or whatever in a company, you'll only get to see that particular division or that particular function. But the CFO and the CEO are the only ones who get to see the pan company view, pan group view, whatever. And therefore, if the CFO can connect external dots as well, you can be really, really powerful in the impact that you can create for yourself and for your function.
You guys, the entire IT services industry, I have a lot of respect for, because you guys created wealth. In the startup world, there's something called ESOP, right? And I would want you to advise younger people here when they join functions. Should they go for a lesser salary and bargain for ESOP? How should they look at it?
I think the war for talent is particularly intense right now. In my 20 plus years in tech industry, I haven't seen the kind of demand and the kind of cost that the tech sort of professionals are currently running at right now. But let's assume in a few months from now, the world settles a little bit more normal. And let's talk about what we need to do when the world is a little bit more normal. I think professionals need to have a balance between paying your EMI and school fees for your kids and all of which are day-to-day life, right? But also have some tolerance for risk. So I don't know, for somebody it could be 50-50, for somebody it could be 80-20, depending on the stage of your career you are in, etc. Be open to it, but be deliberate about it. Don't only listen to all the great stories. This again, like I said, going back, there's a story that Infosys, many people became crorepati's out of the stock options at Infosys, or similarly Wipro, or many other companies. But there are lots of other companies where the ESOPs have become like less than toilet paper as well.
Unfortunately, that's the game also, right? We are in that game.
Exactly.
Yes.
So what you see as the successes in the newspapers and media, etc., is 5%. 95%, things don't go well. So be deliberate about it, understand the company, etc., before you, take it there. So don't be afraid, but be very deliberate with the choice that you make. When if you're a professional and you're evaluating a job offer that's partly cash, partly ESOP, look at it very closely, look at it with a lot of deliberation, and then make the choice that's relevant for you.
Okay, my final question is on the trends for 2022. Some of the trends that you see for Alfahive, and personally, where is it heading for you?
Personally, I think it'll be a lot of hard work because building a product from scratch and bringing it to market, getting the first 4 or 5 customers, is going to be a very interesting journey. But I have no illusions that it's going to be easy there. And coming back to a point that you touched about before, I have no illusions also on my past career. So the quote I continuously use with my team is, even Sachin Tendulkar gets out for duck in some match. So the score you did in your previous match is of no relevance to today's match. So you have a new cricket field in front of you, new bowler, new ball, new whatever. So play with your eye on the ball and not with an eye on the scorecard or your past scores there. So that's the way I see 2022 for me. Lots of hard work, but lots of excitement, and hopefully, like I said, things will go well. We should end the year with about 4 or 5 customers for our product. So that's the goal for me and for Alfahive. But for the industry, I think you will see acceleration of existing trends that have become mega trends right now: adoption of cloud, etc. There, the power of analytics driving business decisions today. Thirdly, I think the world just spent so much money and became so digital. The other day, I was stopped at the intersection of MG Road near Kaban Park, and the beggar who came to my door said, "If you don't have money, can you pay me on GPay or Paytm there?" So that
That's
much of
amazing.
yeah.
That's
So that's
like
Bangalore, and
UPI for
that's
the
the
world kind of thing.
exactly, that's the digital there. The corollary for that will be cybersecurity. And if you don't address it, then not only do you lose your trust and confidence of customers, but with the increasing amount of regulations in India, you have data protection bill, GDPR in Europe, etc. So you also have regulatory compliance issues there. But lastly, it's all not only about business. I think you're going to also deal with mega trends of ways of working. One topic I'm spending a lot of time researching right now is what is the future of work? Because the method that our generation, Vishal, you and I get every morning, get dressed, come to office, etc., is not going to be the future of work there. And I think it will still evolve. We don't know the particular shape it will take right now, and that's another mega trend that leaders need to be prepared for as well. In the peak of the pandemic, we all shifted to remote working, and maybe we just pulled through with a sort of cobbled together shoestrings and bubble gum and whatever solution there. But that solution is also fraying. There are lots of complications, whether it's mental health and many other problems that are evolving because of remote working right now. So be very, very mindful about how you are planning the future of work for yourself and for your teams. So that's another topic that I'm spending a lot of time on.
No, that's I think that's the trend for 2022. And ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. Rostow Ravanan, and he's the CEO and chairman of Alfahive, and he's going to tell us about one final question now. What are the 5 technology trends that you look for in 2022?
I think cloud, automation, artificial intelligence, and I'll sneak in one, but I don't think it'll be 2022. It'll probably be 22 to 25 kind of a time frame, but the seeds for that will happen this year, which I believe is quantum computing. So those are the trends that I look for from a technology trends perspective, but I'll also sneak in a non-technology trend because I think it's fundamental, which is the future of work. I think the future of work is being rewritten right now, and that trend will have a technology component, but also ways of working. How do you build culture on a remote or hybrid teams, etc. So those are the 5 trends that I have my eyes on right now. I asked this comment especially because a lot of people who are going to watch this will be young finance professionals as well.
Correct.
I'll share a lesson that I passed on to my kids a few years back there. I think the definition of literacy in the future will be the ability to read and write software code. So even if you're a finance professional, figure out some exposure to technology, because if you don't understand, can't relate to, and can't work with technology, it'll be a big challenge for you as a professional.
No, that's wonderful, and Ross, I want to have you back again because you're a wealth of knowledge, and every topic that you touched about the future of work itself is a complete different topic. It would go on for an hour. Thank you so much for being on our program, Finance 2022 and Beyond, powered by Capita. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Rostow Ravanan, the CEO and chairman of Alfahive. Thank you so much.